Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the colony's main building and watched the sunrise over New Horizon. The orange light painted the metal buildings and green fields in warm colors. Children were already running to school while their parents headed to work in the mines and farms. Everything looked normal and peaceful. She had been the colony commander for 8 years now. 50,000 people called this place home. They had built something good here on this distant world. The crystal mines provided energy for the whole colony. The farms grew enough food to feed everyone. The workshops made everything they needed. They were finally free from depending on Earth for supplies. Sarah took a sip of her morning coffee and smiled. Today marked exactly 10 years. Since the first colonists had arrived on Kepler 442b, they had named it New Horizon, because it represented a fresh start for humanity among the stars. The planet had clean air, fresh water, and soil that could grow. Earth crops. It was everything they had hoped for when they left their old world behind. The communication device on her wrist buzzed. "Commander Chun, please report to the communication center immediately," said the voice of her assistant Mike. Torres, he sounded worried. Sarah frowned. Mike never sounded worried. She put down her coffee and walked quickly through the building's corridors. Other staff members were rushing around looking concerned. Something was definitely wrong. When she reached the communication center, she found Mike staring at a large screen showing space above their planet. Dozens of huge ships hung in the darkness like metal mountains. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Strange symbols glowed along their sides in patterns that hurt to look at. "When did they arrive?" Sarah asked. "About an hour ago," Mike replied. "They just appeared out of nowhere. Our sensors didn't detect them until they were already here." Sarah studied the alien ships. They were sleek and dark, with smooth curves that seemed to bend light around them. Each one was easily 10 times larger than the biggest human spacecraft. There were at least 30 of them arranged in a perfect formation above the planet. "Have they tried to communicate?" she asked. "Not with us," Mike said. "But we've been listening to emergency broadcasts from Earth." The aliens contacted the United Earth Coalition directly. They call themselves the Zephyrian Hegemony. The main screen flickered and changed to show an emergency broadcast from Earth. A tired-looking man in a military uniform appeared on screen. Sarah recognized General Morrison, the head of colonial affairs. "Citizens of all human colonies," Morrison began, "we have made contact with an alien civilization known as the Zephyrian Hegemony. They have made certain demands regarding our colonial territories. After careful consideration, the United Earth Coalition has decided to comply with these demands." To avoid unnecessary conflict, Sarah felt her stomach drop. She had heard this kind of careful political language before. It usually meant bad news for the colonies. Morrison continued reading from his prepared statement. "Effective immediately, all military personnel and essential technical staff are ordered to report for immediate evacuation from affected colonies. Civilian populations will be relocated as resources permit." "As resources permit?" Sarah whispered. That meant they would take whoever they could and leave the rest behind. The broadcast ended, and the screen returned to showing the alien ships. Sarah noticed that some of them were moving now, descending toward the planet's surface. At the same time, she could see smaller human ships rising from the colony's spaceport. "Mike, get me a connection to the spaceport," she ordered. A few moments later, the face of Captain Rodriguez appeared on screen. He was the commander of the small military base that protected the colony. His expression was grim. "Sarah, I'm sorry," he said before she could speak. "I've received direct orders from Earth Command. All military personnel and technical specialists are to evacuate immediately. The transport ships can only carry about 5,000 people." 5,000? Sarah felt angry now. "There are 50,000 people in this colony. What about the rest of us?" Rodriguez looked away from the camera. "I've been told that additional evacuation ships will be sent as soon as possible. But right now I have my orders." Sarah knew he was lying. They both knew that no additional ships would come. The coalition was cutting their losses and abandoning the colony to save themselves from a war they could not win. How long do we have? She asked. The transports leave in 6 hours, Rodriguez replied. I'm sorry, Sarah, I really am. The connection ended. Sarah stood in silence for a moment, trying to process what was happening. Outside the windows, she could see people going about their normal daily activities. They had no idea that their government had just sold them out to save face with a superior alien force. Mike cleared his throat nervously. Commander, what are your orders? Sarah looked around the communication center. Her staff was watching her, waiting for her to tell them what to do. These people trusted her to keep them safe. She had promised their families that New Horizon would be a sanctuary from the problems of the old world. Send out a colony-wide broadcast, she said finally. Tell everyone to report to the main assembly hall in 1 hour. They deserve to know what's happening. As Mike began preparing the broadcast, Sarah walked back to the observation deck. The alien ships were much closer now. She could see smaller craft moving between them and the planet's surface. In the distance, she could see the human transport. Ships rising into the sky, carrying away the lucky few who had been deemed worth saving. The children were still playing in the schoolyard below. Their parents were still working in the fields and workshops. They had built something beautiful here, something worth protecting. But their own government had decided they were expendable. Sarah thought about her daughter Emma, who was in the school down in the valley. She thought about all the families who had given up everything on Earth to build a new life among the stars. They had worked so hard to make this place their home, and now they were being abandoned to face an unknown. Alien threat alone. An hour later, Sarah stood before 50,000 frightened colonists in the main assembly hall. She told them the truth about the evacuation orders and the alien demands. She watched the hope drain from their faces as they realized that Earth had left them to die. We built this place with our own hands, Sarah said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. We made New Horizon our home when no one else believed we could do it. Now, they tell us we're not worth saving, but I believe we're worth fighting for. Some people began to cry. Others looked angry. Many just looked lost and afraid. Outside, the alien ships cast long shadows across the colony as they settled into position around the planet. The real test was about to begin. Sarah Chun wiped the dirt from her face and checked her watch. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrians had landed on New Horizon. 6 months since Earth had abandoned them. 6 months of hiding in the dark tunnels beneath the planet's surface. The cave system stretched for hundreds of miles under the colony. The early settlers had discovered them during the first mining operations but had never explored them fully. Now these tunnels were home to the 8,000 survivors, who had managed to escape the initial attack. Sarah walked through the main tunnel that connected the different underground settlements. Emergency lights cast long shadows on the rocky walls. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and fear. People moved quietly through the passages, always listening for the sound of alien patrols above. She stopped at the entrance to what used to be called Tunnel 7. Now it was home to 300 people who had once lived in the eastern districts of the colony. Families had made small spaces between the rocks using salvaged materials from the surface. Children played quiet games in the dim light. "Commander Chun," called a voice from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Marcus Webb, the colony's former head of engineering. His clothes were dirty and his hair had gone gray in the past months, but his eyes still showed the sharp intelligence that had helped design the colony's power systems. "What is it, Marcus?" she asked. "We've made a discovery," he said, his voice excited but careful. "Something about their technology, something important." Sarah followed him deeper into the tunnels, to a section they had converted into a workshop. Tables made from metal scraps held pieces of alien equipment that scavenging teams had recovered from the surface. The Zephyrians had left behind damaged devices when they destroyed the colony buildings. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to a strange device about the size of a human hand. It glowed with a soft blue light and had symbols that seemed to move when you looked at them directly. "This is some kind of scanner they use to detect life forms." Sarah had seen the aliens using these devices during their patrols. The Zephyrians would point them at buildings or areas where they suspected humans might be hiding. If the device detected anything, the aliens would use their terrible weapons to destroy everything in the area. "We've been studying how it works," Marcus continued. "The device sends out energy waves that can detect heartbeats and brain activity. It should be able to find us even down here in the caves." "But it doesn't," Sarah said. "They've searched directly above us several times and never found our settlements." Marcus smiled for the first time in months. "Exactly, and we think we know why." He led her to another table where a young woman named Lisa Park was working with electronic equipment. Lisa had been a computer programmer in the colony. Now she was one of their best equipment specialists. "Show her what we found," Marcus said. Lisa picked up a device that looked like a modified radio. "The planet's magnetic field is different from Earth's," she explained. "It creates interference with their scanners. The magnetic minerals in these cave walls make us almost invisible to their sensors." Sarah felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. "How invisible?" "Very invisible," Lisa replied. "Unless they're standing right on top of us, their scanners can't detect us through the rock. And the deeper we go, the safer we are." Marcus pointed to a map of the tunnel system spread across another table. Red marks showed where alien patrols had searched. Blue marks showed the locations of their hidden settlements. "We've been tracking their search patterns. They're systematic but predictable. They search in straight lines and give up if they don't find anything quickly." Sarah studied the map. The Zephyrians controlled the entire surface of the planet now. They had built mining facilities where the human colony used to be. Massive ships arrived regularly to collect the crystal resources. But underground in the dark tunnels, humans were learning to survive. "There's more," Lisa said. "We've been listening to their communications. Their technology is advanced, but it's also rigid. They do everything the same way every time. No creativity, no adaptation." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Their patrol routes never change," Marcus explained. "Their work schedules are exactly the same every day. Even their weapons have predictable charging cycles. They're like machines following a program." A young man named Tommy Rodriguez approached their group. He was the son of the military captain who had evacuated. With the other soldiers, Tommy had been too young to qualify for evacuation, so he had stayed behind with his grandmother. Now he was one of their best scouts. "Commander Chun," he said quietly. "I've got news from the surface." Sarah nodded for him to continue. "I was watching their main mining facility today," Tommy said. "I saw them struggling with one of their machines. It had broken down and they couldn't fix it. They just stood around looking confused until a replacement arrived from their ship. They don't know how to improvise," Lisa added. "When something goes wrong, they can't think of new solutions." Sarah began to understand what they were telling her. The Zephyrians had superior technology, but they lacked something that humans had always taken for granted: the ability to adapt, to solve problems in new ways, to survive when everything went wrong. "We've also learned something else," Marcus said. He picked up another piece of alien equipment. "Their energy weapons are powerful, but they have limitations. They overheat after continuous use. Their gravity manipulation devices can't work effectively in enclosed spaces. And their armor is designed to protect against energy weapons, not against kinetic impacts." Sarah looked around the workshop at all the salvaged alien technology. Her people had been studying it, learning from it, understanding its weaknesses. The same human curiosity and ingenuity that had built the colony was now being applied to understanding their enemy. "How many people know about this?" she asked. "Word is spreading through all the settlements," Marcus replied. "People are starting to hope again. They're starting to think we might have a chance." Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since the day Earth abandoned them. Not just hope, but determination. The Zephyrians had made a mistake when they decided humans were just another primitive species to be eliminated. They had underestimated what happened when humans were pushed to the edge of extinction. "I want teams working around the clock," she said. "Study everything we can salvage, learn how their technology works. Find every weakness, every limitation, every flaw." She walked to the entrance of the workshop and looked back at her people. They were dirty and tired, but they were alive. They were learning. They were adapting. "We're not just hiding anymore," Sarah announced. "We're preparing." Over the following weeks, the underground settlements began to change. The workshops expanded. Scavenging teams became bolder in their missions to the surface. Scientists worked with mechanics to understand alien technology. Former teachers began training people in tactics and stealth. The survivors of New Horizon were discovering something the Zephyrians could never understand. Humans didn't just adapt to survive. When faced with extinction, they adapted to fight back. Sarah Chun crouched behind a metal wall and watched the Zephyrian patrol through her binoculars. 2 years had passed since they went underground. 2 years of learning, planning, and building. Now it was time to strike back. The alien patrol consisted of 4 soldiers in their gleaming armor. They moved in perfect formation through the ruins of what used to be the colony's marketplace. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy as they scanned for any signs of human activity. Sarah smiled grimly. The aliens would find exactly what she wanted them to find. She pressed a button on her radio. "Team Alpha, are you in position?" "Ready." "Commander," came the whispered reply from Jake Morrison, a former shop owner who had become one of their best fighters. "Team Beta?" "In position," replied Maria Santos, who used to teach children and now taught people how to make explosives. Sarah looked at her own team. 5 people crouched beside her, all carrying weapons that looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. They had taken Zephyrian technology and modified it with human engineering. The results were crude but effective. Tommy Rodriguez, now 19 and hardened by 2 years of survival, held a rifle that fired metal projectiles using alien energy cells. The Zephyrians had designed their armor to stop energy weapons, not bullets. Lisa Park carried a device that could jam alien communications by overloading their systems with random signals. Dr. Webb had created grenades that used gravity manipulation technology to crush anything within a small area. "Remember," Sarah whispered to her team, "we hit hard and fast, then disappear. We're not trying to win a battle, we're trying to send a message." The Zephyrian patrol reached the center of the marketplace ruins. This was where the colony's children used to play while their parents shopped for food and supplies. Now it was just broken concrete and twisted metal. One of the aliens stopped and pointed his scanner at a pile of debris. Sarah held her breath. Hidden under that debris was a small device that would emit the signal of a human heartbeat when activated by remote control. The scanner beeped. The alien called to his companions in their harsh, clicking language. All 4 soldiers raised their weapons and aimed at the debris pile. "Now," Sarah whispered into her radio. The attack came from 4 directions at once. Jake's team opened fire from the north, their modified weapons sending metal bullets through alien armor like it was paper. Maria's team attacked from the south with gravity grenades that crushed 2 aliens instantly. Sarah's team struck from the east while the 4th team hit from the west. The entire fight lasted less than 30 seconds. When the smoke cleared, all 4 Zephyrian soldiers were dead. Their advanced technology had been useless against human tactics and determination. "Collect everything useful," Sarah ordered. "We have 3 minutes before their backup arrives." Her teams moved quickly through the alien bodies, taking weapons, equipment, and communication devices. They had learned to salvage everything. Every piece of alien technology made them stronger. Tommy found something interesting on one of the bodies. "Commander, look at this," he said, holding up a small device covered in alien symbols. Lisa examined it quickly. "It's a data storage unit. Might have useful information." "Take it," Sarah said. "Time to go." The teams vanished into the ruins just as more Zephyrian ships appeared in the sky above. Sarah led her people through a hidden entrance that connected to the tunnel system. Within minutes, they were safely underground while alien reinforcements searched the empty marketplace. Later that evening, Sarah stood in the main assembly hall deep in the tunnel system. The space had been carved out of solid rock and could hold 1,000 people. Tonight, it was full of survivors who had come to hear about the successful raid. "Today we proved something important," Sarah announced to the crowd. "We proved that they can be beaten. Their technology is powerful, but they are not invincible." The crowd cheered quietly. Even their celebrations were subdued now. Trained by 2 years of hiding from alien sensors, Dr. Webb stepped forward with the data device they had captured. "We've managed to decode some of the information on this," he said. "And what we found changes everything." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Webb's expression was serious, even frightened. "The device contains communication logs between the Zephyrian forces here and their command structure," Webb continued. "New Horizon isn't the only human colony they've attacked. They've destroyed 12 other worlds in the past 2 years." The assembly hall fell silent. 12 colonies. Thousands of human lives, but that's not the worst part, Webb said. "According to these communications, Earth is next. The Zephyrian hegemony plans to invade the home system within the next 3 years. Sarah felt rage building inside her chest. Not only had Earth abandoned the colonies to save themselves, but they were still going to be destroyed anyway. The politicians and generals who had left 50,000 people to die would face the same fate they had condemned others to. "There's more," Lisa added, stepping up beside Webb. "The communications mentioned something called cleansing protocols. The Zephyrians don't just want to take human worlds. They want to eliminate humanity completely. They see us as a potential threat that needs to be removed before we can develop more advanced technology." The crowd began to murmur angrily. These aliens hadn't just attacked their home. They were planning genocide against the entire human species. "How many ships do they have?" asked Maria Santos. Webb consulted the data device. "The main fleet has over 300 capital ships. Each one is larger than anything humanity has ever built. But here's the interesting part. They're having supply problems." "What kind of problems?" Sarah asked. "Their technology requires rare materials that aren't found on many worlds," Lisa explained. "That's why they need the crystals from New Horizon and the other colonies. Without these resources, their ships can't maintain full operational capacity." Sarah began to see possibilities forming. "So if we could disrupt their supply lines, we could weaken their entire fleet," Webb finished. "But it would require coordinated attacks across multiple star systems. We'd need to contact other resistance groups on other worlds." Tommy raised his hand. "Commander, we captured a communication device during today's raid. Could we use it to contact other human survivors?" Lisa nodded excitedly. "If we modify it properly, we might be able to send messages to other colonies without the Zephyrians detecting them." Sarah looked around the assembly hall at the faces of her people. 2 years ago, they had been farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, and engineers. Now they were fighters, saboteurs, and soldiers. The aliens had tried to destroy them, but instead had forged them into something harder and more dangerous. "We're not just fighting for our own survival anymore," Sarah announced. "We're fighting for the future of humanity itself. The Zephyrians made a mistake when they left us alive. They gave us time to learn, to adapt, and to grow strong." She held up the captured alien weapon. "They taught us that superior technology means nothing without the will to use it creatively. They showed us that perfect organization becomes weakness when faced with unpredictable tactics." The crowd was standing now, their faces hard with determination. "We're going to contact every human survivor in this galaxy," Sarah continued. "We're going to teach them what we've learned. And then we're going to show the Zephyrian hegemony what happens when you try to exterminate humanity." The assembly hall erupted in fierce, quiet cheers. In the tunnels beneath a dead colony, the seeds of galactic rebellion had been planted. Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the captured Zephyrian warship and watched the alien homeworld grow larger on the main screen. 4 years had passed since the first attack on New Horizon. 4 years since Earth had abandoned them to die. Now she commanded a fleet of 30 ships, all stolen from the enemy and modified with human engineering. The scar across her left cheek was a reminder of the battle where they had taken this ship. The Zephyrians had fought desperately to keep their vessel, but they had never faced humans who fought with nothing left to lose. Sarah touched the scar and smiled coldly. Every mark on her body was a lesson learned and a victory earned. "Commander," called Lieutenant Tommy Rodriguez from the weapons station. The young man who had once been a scared boy hiding in tunnels was now her most trusted officer. "We're receiving signals from the other ships in our fleet. All teams are ready for the assault," Sarah nodded. The fleet around her consisted of ships that shouldn't exist. Human engineers had taken Zephyrian technology and improved it in ways the aliens had never imagined. Where the originals had been efficient but rigid, the human versions were adaptable and unpredictable. "Lisa, what's the status of our psychological warfare program?" Sarah asked. Lisa Park, now the fleet's communication specialist, grinned from her station. "The broadcasts have been running for 3 days. We're intercepting Zephyrian military communications across the system. Their morale is collapsing." The psychological warfare had been Sarah's idea. Instead of just attacking Zephyrian installations, they had begun broadcasting messages directly into alien communication networks. The messages were simple but effective. Footage of human survivors rising from the tunnels, recordings of Zephyrian soldiers being defeated by primitive humans, and most importantly, lists of every alien military unit that had been destroyed by human forces. The Zephyrians had spent centuries believing they were the superior species in the galaxy. They had never faced an enemy that refused to surrender, that learned from every defeat, and that grew stronger with each battle. The broadcasts were destroying their confidence in their own invincibility. "Dr. Webb, what's the status of our special weapons?" Sarah asked. Marcus Webb, now the fleet's chief engineer, looked up from his console. His hair was completely white now, but his eyes burned with the intensity of a man who had found his true purpose. "The viral programs are ready for deployment. When we infiltrate their computer networks, we can disable their entire defense grid within hours." The computer viruses were another human innovation that the Zephyrians couldn't comprehend. Their technology was designed to be perfect and unchanging. The idea that software could be written to evolve and adapt was completely foreign to them. Human programmers had created digital weapons that thought like humans, adapting to new situations and finding creative solutions to obstacles. Sarah walked to the main screen and studied the Zephyrian homeworld. It was a massive planet covered in gleaming cities and orbital installations. Millions of aliens lived there, protected by the most advanced military force in the galaxy. They had never been attacked in their own system. They believed they were safe. "Maria, are the boarding teams ready?" Sarah asked of Maria Santos, the former teacher who had become their expert in close combat tactics. Checked her equipment one more time. 3,000 fighters across the fleet. "We've been training for this moment for 2 years. The boarding teams were perhaps the most terrifying weapon in Sarah's arsenal. Each fighter was a human who had survived 4 years of warfare against impossible odds. They wore armor made from salvaged alien materials, carried weapons that combined human creativity with alien technology, and most importantly, they fought with the fury of people who had been left to die by their own species. "Remember," Sarah announced to the entire fleet over the communication system, "we're not here to conquer. We're here to send a message. The galaxy needs to know that humanity cannot be eliminated. We need to show them what happens when you abandon humans to die." The fleet moved toward the planet's orbital defenses. Massive space stations armed with weapons that could destroy entire cities turned to face the approaching human ships. Warning signals filled the communication channels as Zephyrian commanders tried to understand how primitive humans had acquired such advanced vessels. "They're demanding our surrender?" Lisa reported with amusement in her voice. Sarah laughed, a sound that held no humor. "Tell them we're the survivors of New Horizon. Tell them we're here to collect what they owe us." The battle began when the first orbital station opened fire. Beams of energy that could melt through solid metal struck the human ships. But the human vessels didn't behave like normal spacecraft. Where Zephyrian ships would have maintained formation and followed established tactics, the human fleet scattered in all directions. Each ship following its own unpredictable pattern. Tommy fired the ship's main weapons at a space station. The alien installation's shields absorbed the energy blast easily. But then the second wave of weapons hit. Kinetic projectiles, gravity bombs, and viral torpedoes struck the station from 6 different directions at once. The Zephyrians had designed their defenses to handle one type of attack at a time. They couldn't adapt quickly enough to deal with humans who used every type of weapon simultaneously. Their defense grid is collapsing, Dr. Webb reported as his computer viruses spread through the alien networks. Their ships can't coordinate their attacks anymore. Sarah watched as confusion spread through the Zephyrian fleet. Their ships began firing at empty space as their sensors fed them false information. Some vessels collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. The perfect military machine was destroying itself because it couldn't handle the chaos that humans brought to every battle. Boarding teams launch, Sarah ordered. Hundreds of small craft shot out from the human ships toward the largest Zephyrian vessels. Each craft carried fighters who had learned to think like their enemy while retaining their human unpredictability. They would capture alien ships from the inside while the main fleet continued its assault within hours. The orbital defenses around the Zephyrian homeworld had been neutralized. 30 human ships now controlled the space around a planet that was home to billions of aliens. It should have been impossible, but humans had made it real. "Commander," Tommy reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "It's from their supreme leader," Sarah smiled. "Put it on the main screen." A tall, elegant alien appeared on the screen. Its features were sharp and angular, with large eyes that showed intelligence and fear. When it spoke, its voice was translated by the ship's computer into human language. "I am Supreme Commander Zethkari of the Zephyrian Hegemony," the alien said. "We demand to know by what authority you attack our homeworld." Sarah stepped forward so the alien could see her clearly. "I am Sarah Chun, Commander of the Forsaken Fleet. I represent every human you tried to exterminate. Every colony you destroyed. Every life you took because you thought we were too primitive to matter." The alien's eyes widened as it recognized what it was seeing. A human commander standing on the bridge of a captured Zephyrian warship, surrounded by technology that had been improved beyond its original design. "We have a message for your species," Sarah continued. "Humanity is no longer hiding in tunnels. We are no longer running from your forces. We have learned everything you taught us about warfare, and we have made it better." She gestured to the fleet around her. "These ships were yours. These weapons were yours. This technology was yours? But now it serves us, and it serves us better than it ever served you." The alien leader tried to maintain its composure, but Sarah could see the fear in its eyes. "This is just the beginning," Sarah announced. "We're coming for every world you've taken, every species you've enslaved, every human colony you've destroyed. And when we're finished, the galaxy will know that humanity is not a species that can be abandoned or eliminated." The transmission ended, leaving the alien to contemplate the impossible sight of humans commanding a fleet above the Zephyrian homeworld. Sarah Chen stood in the command center of her flagship as it approached Earth's solar system. 6 years had passed since the abandonment of New Horizon. 6 years since her government had decided that some humans were worth saving and others were not. Now she was returning home with a fleet of 200 captured ships and an army of survivors, who had learned to turn the galaxy's weapons against itself. The blue and green marble of Earth grew larger on the main screen. It looked peaceful and beautiful from space, just as Sarah remembered it. But intelligence reports told a different story. The United Earth Coalition was in the final stages of surrendering to the Zephyrian hegemony. Humanity's leaders were about to sign papers that would make their entire species slaves to avoid a war they believed they could not win. "Commander," called Tommy Rodriguez from his station. The young man was now Admiral Rodriguez commanding his own squadron of 30 ships. "We're detecting massive alien vessels in Earth's orbit. It looks like the surrender ceremony is already in progress." Sarah studied the tactical display. 50 Zephyrian warships surrounded Earth like a cage. of metal and energy. In the center of the formation sat a massive command vessel that dwarfed even the largest human space stations. This was where Earth's leaders would hand over the freedom of their entire species. "Lisa, can you intercept their communications?" Sarah asked. Lisa Park, now the fleet's intelligence chief, worked at her console for several minutes. "I'm picking up broadcasts from Earth's surface. The ceremony is being transmitted across the entire planet. They're calling it the Peaceful Integration Protocol." Sarah's jaw tightened. Even in surrender, the politicians couldn't use honest words. They were calling slavery integration and defeat peace. "Put it on the main screen," she ordered. The image changed to show a large hall filled with Earth's most important leaders. President Hamilton stood at a podium, speaking to cameras that would carry his words to every human world. Behind him stood several tall Zephyrian officials in their gleaming uniforms. "Citizens of Earth and all human colonies," Hamilton was saying, "today marks a new chapter in human history. By joining the Zephyrian hegemony as a client species, we ensure the survival and prosperity of our race." Sarah felt sick listening to the words. Hamilton was smiling as he spoke about surrender. The man who had ordered the abandonment of 50,000 colonists was now abandoning the entire human species. "The hegemony has assured us that humans will be treated fairly and given meaningful roles within their empire," Hamilton continued. "This agreement will prevent unnecessary bloodshed and allow our civilization to grow under the guidance of a more advanced species." A Zephyrian official stepped forward. Sarah recognized the creature from intelligence reports. This was Supreme Commander Zethkari, the same alien she had spoken to during the attack on their homeworld. "Humans will serve in roles suited to their abilities," Zethkari announced in its translated voice. "Your species shows promise as laborers and technicians. Under proper supervision, you may even prove useful." Sarah turned away from the screen in disgust. The aliens were talking about humans like they were animals being trained for work. "Dr. Webb," she called to her chief engineer, "are our communication systems ready?" Marcus Webb looked up from his console. "We can override every broadcast system on Earth and throughout the colonies. When you're ready to speak, the entire human species will hear you." Sarah nodded. It was time to remind humanity what they were really made of. "Maria, what's the status of our fleet?" she asked. Maria Santos, now commanding the Marine forces, checked her reports. 50,000 fighters across 200 ships. Every one of them a survivor who was left to die by their own government. They're ready for anything. Sarah walked to the center of the command deck and looked at her officers. These people had been ordinary colonists 6 years ago. Now they commanded the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. They had learned to think like their enemies while keeping their human souls. "Begin the override," Sarah ordered, on Earth. And every human colony, the surrender ceremony suddenly disappeared from every screen. In its place appeared the image of Sarah Chun standing on the bridge of a captured Zephyrian warship. "People of Earth," she began. "My name is Sarah Chun. I was the commander of New Horizon Colony when your government decided we were not worth saving." In the Great Hall on Earth, President Hamilton stared at the screens in shock. The Zephyrian officials looked confused as their perfect ceremony was interrupted by ghosts from their past. 6 years ago, you abandoned 50,000 colonists to die rather than risk a war with the Zephyrian hegemony, Sarah continued. You decided that some humans were expendable. You chose to sacrifice us to save yourselves. The camera pulled back to show the fleet around her. Ship after ship of captured alien vessels, all flying under human command. But you made a mistake. You taught us that we could only depend on ourselves. You showed us that when the powerful abandon the weak must become strong. On Earth, people stopped what they were doing to watch the impossible sight of humans commanding alien warships. In the Great Hall, President Hamilton was frantically trying to cut the transmission, but his technicians could do nothing against the advanced systems Sarah's people controlled. We didn't just survive, Sarah announced. We learned. We adapted. We took everything the aliens used against us and made it our own. We became something they never expected. We became dangerous. The scene changed to show footage from battles across the galaxy, Zephyrian ships being destroyed by human tactics, alien installations falling to human ingenuity, worlds being liberated by forces that shouldn't exist. The Zephyrian hegemony is not invincible, Sarah declared. They are efficient but inflexible, they are powerful but predictable. They are advanced but unable to adapt. And now they face an enemy that specializes in doing the impossible. Supreme Commander Zefkari stepped toward the cameras in the Great Hall. This transmission is illegal. These criminals do not represent humanity. Sarah's image smiled coldly on every screen across human space. We are the humans you left to die. We are the colonies you abandoned. We are the proof that your species cannot be eliminated or enslaved. The camera focused on Sarah's scarred face. You tried to surrender our species to avoid a war. But the war has already begun, and we're winning it. She gestured to her fleet. Every ship you see was taken from the enemy. Every weapon we carry was built from their technology. Every victory we've won proves that humans don't need to surrender to survive. President Hamilton finally managed to speak. Commander Chun, please be reasonable. The hegemony is too powerful. We must negotiate for the best possible terms. Sarah's laugh echoed across every human world. Negotiate? They came to exterminate us. They destroyed our colonies. They murdered our families. And you want to negotiate? She leaned closer to the camera. We have a better idea. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you try to eliminate humanity. We're going to teach every species in the universe that humans are not a species that can be conquered, enslaved, or abandoned. The transmission ended with images of the human fleet moving toward Earth. 200 ships that shouldn't exist, commanded by people who shouldn't have survived, carrying weapons that shouldn't work. In the Great Hall, Supreme Commander Zefkari looked at the human leaders with something approaching fear. Your abandoned colonists have become a threat to the stability of the entire galaxy. President Hamilton stared at the screens that now showed nothing but static. How is this possible? Outside Earth's atmosphere, Sarah Chun prepared to show her homeworld exactly what the abandoned colonists had become. The war for humanities. Future was about to begin, and this time, humans would not be the ones asking for mercy.